John, how are you?
I am doing great. I'm doing well.
Excellent.
Thanks
That's good
for
to hear.
having me. Yeah, hope you're doing
Uh,
well too.
our pleasure. So, before we get into the album directly, this last couple of months, 6 months or so, has been very strange. All of us have had a lot of time on our hands all of a sudden, and then one thing you did was play the guitar a lot.
Sure.
Um, Was there one thing that you discovered or rediscovered about your own playing or the guitar in general,
One thing. Hmm. You know,
or several things?
yeah, I used this time very productively and have been playing a lot of guitar and writing a lot of music. I don't know if this is necessarily discovery or more of an affirmation. Just I love playing guitar.
Mm.
I love being a creative person. And a long time ago, thankfully, I discovered that the guitar was going to be my vehicle to be able to do that. I mean, I used to paint and draw and write, and so it was kind of always in my blood. But and it could have been any instrument, I guess. It's weird the way that happens, but the guitar was what I discovered when I was young. And so, yeah, during all this time where, like you said, everything's locked down, there's no live performances, and people might be reconnecting with that side. For me, it's just been like every day has been, oh, what's today going to bring creatively? And it just doesn't get old, doesn't get boring, doesn't dry up. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting because obviously you've been playing for a long time. You've delved in all kinds of aspects of guitar playing, the technical side, everything.
Sure.
And being as proficient as you are, how do you keep it exciting? How do you keep it from becoming boring then?
Right. I mean, I try to maintain a sense of perspective about my own playing, almost from an outsider. And I don't know if that's from just, gaining some experience as a producer with Dream Theater and sort of having to do that and enjoying doing that. But I do that with my own music, with my own guitar solos, whatever. Like as I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, is that, if I was listening to that, if I didn't know me and I'm listening, is that something that's really going to be either convincing or moving emotionally, or is it going to be interesting as far as the craft of the guitar? How does it hit me as a listener? And when you ask those kind of questions, it causes you to kind of be like, all right, well, I'm not just going to keep doing the same old thing and be lazy about it. And so that makes me constantly challenge myself, try to come up with new things, and, have those aha moments when you're like, oh my God, that I've never done that before. That was cool. And putting that into the music. So I think having that sort of, I wrote the lyrics to one of the, to a Dream Theater song called The Bigger Picture, which is specifically about that. It's about stepping back, being able to look at the bigger picture and see why the decisions you make contribute to what you're trying to accomplish, like your vision. So it's stepping back. Yeah.
I find that interesting because obviously you hear music all the time. Do you have a similar approach than when you hear other people playing the guitar? Do you kind of dissect it?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm as analytical with other people's playing. I just I let it sort of just hit me more emotionally, and I find for me that's why I like a certain guitar player or not, or why they reach me or not. It's like, does whatever they're doing, whether it's technical or not technical, or it could be basic, it could be complicated, it's just, does it grab me emotionally? And I don't think I listen as analytically that way. If I'm getting into trying to find out what they're doing, then I might do it that way. But I don't listen as critically. I don't think I don't think I listen as judgmentally to other players as I do to myself.
Sure. Well, in that sense, and this is kind of overarching everything that you've done. But are you very, very? Do you set the bar high for yourself?
I try to. Yeah, I think I do. I mean, it's so funny because the amount of talent that has developed over the years is just skyrocketed. So, I think I might think my bar is high, and then some little kid is playing what I'm doing with no problem. So I set it high to my to my abilities. It's like, I try to do that. It's like I'm not into being lazy with guitar playing. Or being complacent, or, same with writing music, with whether it's Dream Theater albums or my solo albums. It's like I look at every album as an opportunity to make a statement, and to put your best voice forward. So yeah, I try to set that bar high.
What did you hope to say then with now this new record terminal velocity? What was kind of this? I don't know if it's particularly a statement, but what
Sure.
did you want to say with the music?
Well, to me, and everybody that does solo albums has a different take on this type of thing. But my take on my solo album, including the first one, Suspended Animation, was that I wanted it to be kind of a window into what I am like as a player and a creative person, just by myself. Like if I'm given the opportunity to just do my thing, I want that to be reflected in the most complete way. So that means, keeping the instrumentation, the orchestration minimal, guitar, bass, drums. There's no guests, no vocals, no extra instruments, just I want people to hear the way I play. And that includes tonally as well, and that whole pursuit of guitar sounds, which is something that I'm really, really into. So a reflection of that. And then, musically, showing the different sides that I enjoy playing that you might not necessarily hear from me in, say, Dream Theater, right, which is, maybe more stylized, but like, and this is nothing new. Most guitar players love to play blues and rock and roll, right, and everything like that. But you might not hear that from a certain player. But for me, that it's so much fun, putting an acoustic solo on a song, doing a blues, doing, shuffle, swing, adding some Latin influence, all that kind of stuff. That's like I might do on my own. I might experiment with at home, but you might not hear it on the music that you associate with me generally. So that's the other side, to give you, again, a window into like, what am I all about as a guitar player, as a creative person, and as a tone sculptor, whatever you want to call that, and I guess that's my philosophy on solo albums.
You mentioned the blues, and so let's jump into the song "Out of the Blue" then, because
Sure.
that's one that's very, very blues, I suppose, influenced.
Yeah.
It reminded me somewhat of Gary Moore's playing. So this side of you, this more bluesy side of you, how did that develop, and where is that now in terms of your playing?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of ways it developed. I think, first of all, from just being a young kid, and like the way that I learned guitar is I learned songs. I sat there with my record player, slowing it down and learning guitar solos from all these different guitarists. And in doing that, you can't help but absorb a blues bass, because whether it's Angus Young or Jimmy Page or unfortunately, Eddie Van Halen, or the guys in Iron Maiden, or whatever you're learning, that most of the time those players have a blues. There's like a blues bass that's there, so you kind of naturally learn it. Like you sort of know the basics of it. But then as I started to expand into the other players that I was, as I started to get better and look at other music, then maybe some fusion kind of comes in, and you start to hear guys like Robin Ford, maybe John Scofield, stuff like that. So you're hearing blues and jazz kind of mixed. And then, from me, a big one was Stevie Ray Vaughan, hearing him for the first time. And that being like, whoa, I mean, he's playing blues and everything, but he's playing it with such fire and attitude and conviction and sound. And all those things kind of go into the pot. Gary Moore, for sure. Whenever I heard Gary play, I mean, it's just such a beautiful, soulful feeling. Neil Schon, the same way. These blues elements are within the playing. And as a young player, I'm like learning all this, absorbing all this. Even guys like Larry Carlton, stuff like that. So it infuses into my playing. It's not necessarily the stylistic direction that I took my career in, but it's fun to play. And like, you know, I don't know how many blues jams I've had, you know, with friends, with Dream Theater, with, you know, at NAMM shows, hanging out, whatever. It's like this sort of universal language. So being able to do that and understand that, I think, is kind of important. It's just like this sort of like community that you could be a part of, and sort of like anybody could really do it and have fun. Where it is now is sort of in the sense that those players I mentioned, the way that they did it, where it's infused in my playing. Like you'll hear in Dream Theater and Liquid Tension and my solo stuff, you'll hear bluesy aspects, even if the song or the solo is not a blues style song, you'll hear it. You'll hear that stuff go by. But in the case of Out of the Blue, or even Lost Without You from Suspended Animation, that's a jazz blues. Those are songs where I really sort of sunk my teeth into that style.
Right.
You know, and it was just fun. And for me, the way that I tried to make it different was just not making it a traditional blues, but infusing my own style into it. So if you listen to Out of the Blue, it is a blues, but like even the turnarounds have chords in it that you wouldn't normally hear. And then the, whatever you want to call them, the choruses or the bridge moments are totally not blues at all. They're like more straight time, I don't know, dregs-ish, Steve Morse influence type of stuff. And then it'll go back to the bluesy thing that goes back into like a Purdy shuffle. So I like that. I like you know, utilizing a style but making it your own, as opposed to just saying, I'm just going to do standard blues and put it on my album. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's kind of my...
it's a very interesting one, because well, the thing that popped into my head for some reason was I remember a quote being attributed to Jimi Hendrix that goes along the lines of the blues is easy to play but hard to master. And so do you agree that, and kind of that, I mean, that's not a very good question, but in terms of making things your own, is that the difficult part then?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that, like you said, the basic components of it are very universal, that most guitar players can kind of wrap their heads around. But it's only certain people that know how to really make that speak and make it something that's emotional and musical. And that's the part. And I agree, you know, that Hendrix thing is so true. You know, you can have like 100 guys playing blues, but like there'll be one guy that you just like, oh man, there's magic in what he's doing. And even if you try to analyze it, it's tough to really know. By the way, speaking of this topic, the song Snake in My Boot is a blues. And it's a shuffle. It's like a rock and roll shuffle, and it's a 1-4-5. But what I did to make it my own is that when it goes to the 5 chord, which in that key in A is E, I didn't do the traditional rock and roll style. I shifted it to a more modal, you know, I don't know, Middle Eastern, Egyptian kind of vibe with drum circle, just only for the 5 chord. And then it goes back to the rock and roll shuffle. So stuff like that, things that like when you're listening, this is part of that thing I said where you step back and you're like, is this interesting? Sure. Or have I heard this before? And I'm like, just going to fast forward. So things like that, putting my own personality into a standard form of the song, you know, it's just a way that I like to keep things interesting.
Sure. And well, with sorry, with having a diverse album like this, how do these songs arise? Do you kind of like, because I can't imagine you saying, well, today I'm going to write a blues song, or today I'm going to play some. So how do these songs kind of make themselves apparent to you?
Right. It's really, well, it's kind of interesting. So whenever I'm playing guitar and something hits me, I don't know why it hits me, but I'm just playing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, this is sort of cool what I'm playing here. I record it. Like, I used to be really concerned about, I have to record this the right way and have my whole set. No more. I just have an iPhone. I open voice memos and I record the idea. And the idea could be, 15, 30 seconds, or it could be 2 minutes long. But I captured whatever that inspiration was at that moment, whatever the seed was. In the case of Out of the Blue, I mean, it was sort of that melody line and the chords, and I was like, this is cool. I'm going to record this, and I'll have dozens and dozens of those ideas. And so what I did in the case of Terminal Velocity was I sifted through all of those ideas, picked out what I thought were the most interesting, best ones that could potentially turn into a song, and organized them and labeled them. And so I had this sort of palette to choose from. And then I think probably just because of experience from doing this for a long time, I sort of thought again of the bigger picture. Well, how long of an album do I want to make? What types of styles do I want to put on here? And I started to kind of sift through, well, this could be good for that. This could be good for that. You know, this one is definitely blues based. That'll be a cool moment. Maybe this song could be a ballad. Oh, this will be a cool, heavy 7-string song. I'll do that. And so I start to kind of like, you know, before long, like within the first week, I'm already out. I've outlined the album, like the ideas, you know, like I set a goal. I might not follow it exactly, but at least I kind of have a goal. Like the record is going to be about an hour long. I want these kind of styles. You know, I want this many songs, and it sort of gives me a sense of direction.
Sure.
And it makes me stay on track. Like I set a goal, and again, you could veer away from that or not, but at least I'm not just blindly, you know, going in there. So in the case of, let's say, the song Terminal Velocity, so that was the first song I wrote during these sessions. So I literally, all that I had was the opening motif that you hear. And I started with that. And my engineer, his name is Jimmy T, which it was him and I in Dream Theater Studio at the beginning of March. It's like, okay, open up a Pro Tools session, play the riff. What's a good tempo for that? All right, set the tempo, and it, you know, tracked that part. All right, let me play some bass, or you know, let's program drums. Program some drums, play bass to it. Okay, that's the first part. I wonder where it should go from here, and then I'll just start to build it. And it's just like, it's interesting. It's like starting with a blank piece of paper or canvas. You have one paint stroke. Well, that's kind of interesting. Where could it go from here? And you start painting, and before you know, you have this completed picture. And it's this adventure. It's sort of stream of consciousness. And that's how I write this style of music.
Okay. Yeah. With this album then, which finalized kind of painting, so to say, was the most surprising to you?
The most surprising to me, let's see. Probably, well, I don't know if this answers the question completely, but I'll just use this as an example. So the one song on the record that's really super old is a song called Gemini. Okay. And back in the early 90s, mid 90s, I used to do a lot of guitar clinics, and I wrote these little sort of demo songs that I would, you know, do a guitar clinic in a music store or at the NAMM show. And I'd have these songs, I'd play along to them, and that would be my little spot. So they weren't very well written, I would say. They were more meant to sort of demo the guitar and show different techniques. But this one song called Gemini, that my late father-in-law named, so it's kind of nice to have the name of it, just stuck out. Like, you know, I just thought I should record that one of these days. So I, in going into doing this record, I had no recording of it. I had no version of it. I had no demo of it. So I had to go online and find on YouTube anybody that happened to be at the NAMM show in 1994 and get the version and try to learn it. And I was like, this is going to be tough. Me and Jimmy T built it. We're like, all right, I think this is what I played. It was because it was like crappy recording on YouTube. And, you know, I think this is what I meant. And we built the song. And then I'm listening to it. I'm like, this is pretty immature sounding. Like I was really young. It was a guitar. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So at some point I decided to tackle it, and I recorded the whole thing. I even put a gypsy jazz acoustic solo on it. And by the time I was done, that surprised me. I was like, I know this is an old song, but it kind of feels like it fits on the album. It was a struggle to put together, but the end result surprised me. So it doesn't exactly answer your question because it's not one of the new paintings, but it was an old construction. It was like,
sure,
it was like finding an old dilapidated house in remodeling it, you know,
Right,
and you don't know how it's going to turn out, but at the end I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then, you know, from some of the feedback I got that I got to read and stuff with fans online and stuff, everyone sort of like, I like, you know, they pointed to that song, like, that's interesting, you know, it's like the oldest thing on there.
Very quickly, what did your father-in-law say about why he called it Gemini?
About why? I don't know. I played it for him. My wife and I were living in this apartment at the time in New Jersey, and he was over the house one day, and I just played it for him, and he listened to it, and he's like, that should be called Gemini. He was a piano player. He was an amazing piano player, really, really gifted musician. And I don't remember why he thought it, but it just came to his head. I'm like, all right. But
when I listened to that song, I heard kind of the contrast in that song and the dynamic. Sure. So it did make sense, Gemini, kind of with those two sides.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's what he heard too. Maybe the song, you know, when he was listening to it, sounded like it had kind of some duality to it, and so that's what came to me.
As far as the recording process, and because I imagine you working out these sketches by yourself, what was it like getting the other people in, and then in particular to play with Mike again? So,
you know, what I decided to do with this, again, it was me and my engineer, Jimmy T, you know, during the real big spike of the pandemic in New York in March. And it was just the two of us. We'd come into the studio, and he was great because he'd set up the sessions. Like I said, I'd start these songs, build them. He programmed drums for me. He's really great. He plays bass. He played some bass on it. And by the, you know, after, I forgot how long, maybe 2 months, like the album was done. Like the final, as I was writing the music, I was recording final guitars because I didn't want to go through a demo stage. So guitars were done, songs were done, drums were programmed, bass was played. So now it was like, okay, now I'm going to share this with Dave LaRue and Mike Portnoy, and they're going to do their thing on it, you know? So in the case of Dave, I mean, Dave was, I've played with him so much over the years. He played on my first solo album. I played so many G3 tours with him. You know, we played so many shows together. He's played in my camp, you know, so I always knew Dave was going to be the man for this. I always promised him, you know, even though it took me 15 years, I was like, when I do my solo album, you're definitely playing it. So I knew Dave would be killer. You know, Mike, obviously, I played in Dream Theater with him for 25 years. He knows how I play. I know how he plays. And we hadn't played together in 10 years. So I think with the pandemic, with just all this questionable stuff going on in the world, you know, I woke up one day, I'm like, I'm going to ask Mike, like, this will be, I think it's a good idea. You know, my family was kind of like immediately pushing for it. You know, where our families are all friends and everything, but they're like, oh, you got to get Mike. Mike will do it, you know? And, you know, I was like, hey, I'll think about it, you know, but, you know, Mike said, yeah, absolutely. He doesn't live too far from me. So he was able to come up to the studio and track in person, which was really cool. Dave's in Florida. He had a track remotely, which worked out fine. But, you know, for me, having Mike come up and track in person was really cool. And it's funny. There's some funny things about it because, you know, again, because this was happening during the pandemic, this was probably beginning of May or something like that. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to use for a drum kit, you know? And it's like, you know, all the companies and things were sort of like in a weird state. So he couldn't even get drums, you know, like from this drum. So I have a drum kit in my house a Tama kit that Mike hooked me up with a long time ago. Cause that, you know, I was like, I wanted a drum kit in my house. So I'm like, what about the Tama kit in my house? And like took pictures, like, yeah, that'll do. And so I like, my wife and my son and me like broke it down, loaded it into my truck. So I drum roadied from Mike, and you know, we brought it in, and he drove his car and like had some like octobans and his snare and some cymbals, and we put together this kit, and it ended up sounding awesome. But it's funny, it's like the things you do, like when you have to do it, you make it happen. And the kid ended up sounding awesome. Drums sound great. Mike, we spent a week in the studio. He was great. You know, he learned all the material. He didn't play exactly what the drum programming was, which I didn't want him to anyway. He did his thing. He asked me in the beginning, hey, do you want me to play this sort of what you programmed? And I was like, no, I want, that's just a guide. And so, he did his thing. We had fun. It was cool connecting again musically. We hadn't done that in 10 years. We didn't really get a chance to play together so much because the guitars were already recorded, but we did have a couple of opportunities to like work out, if there was a more difficult part, we'd play a bit and work out, and that was fun. So it was really, really cool reconnecting with him musically. And again, both him and Dave, man, just kudos to them. They brought the album to the next level and did an amazing job. They're two incredible musicians, so couldn't be happier.
One thing I can imagine you doing all these huge projects and everything, that it must have been nice to have it, for better or for worse, to have it smaller this instance, sure. And to have it kind of, because I was gonna ask, did you have any purpose, or what do you want people to take away from it? But talking to you, I would say, is it just fun in a way, almost? It
is.
You made an album for fun?
It definitely is for fun. It's definitely to almost prove something to myself, because the other component of all this that doesn't really usually get talked about, but I put this out on my own record label through the Orchard distribution, which is worldwide distribution. But since I'm the record label, I'm handling everything, right? So
sure.
It's everything from the pressing plant, details, to marketing, to the online interface of how you have to upload your artwork and your music, and set the correct price in iTunes, and how much are you going to do, any discounts, and when's it going to go on sale? Are there pre-sales? So there was this huge learning curve on the business side for me, that I was like, all right, and it took a lot of time, a lot of my time to do and to tackle that. So the day that the digital version was released, August 28th, I felt this real sense of like, I did it. You know what I mean? This is like, it's been 15 years. I finally did another solo album, but other than that, everything worked. And when you click on Spotify, it actually comes up. Everything worked all right. And actually, tomorrow the physical versions will be released, the vinyl and the CD. So it might sound funny for me this far into my career to hear this from me, but being empowered by doing that myself and learning so much about it was really, really cool. Now, for Suspended Animation, my first album, my wife actually started the record label Sound My Music, and we did that together. And it was similar. I mean, we were selling CDs out of our garage, and she was doing all the business for that and shipping. So we did have some experience, but the world is a lot different now in the way that music is distributed, consumed, of course. Everything. Yeah. So there's so many aspects that I wasn't really, completely sure of how to do. So big learning curve. So yeah.
I think it's very. Oh, sorry. I think it's very interesting that you keep this DIY approach, like you said, as far as you are in your career, that you're still willing to learn all kinds of aspects of the business. And I think that's very good.
It's important. And in doing that too, there's also no shortcuts. It's like I'm the type of person where I want everything to be as best as it could be. So I had Andy Sneap mix the record, and Andy's so brilliant.
Sure.
It's not like I'm like, I'll mix it myself and it'll just sound like crap. It's like Andy mixed the record. Sean Mosier Smith did all the artwork. So it's like the record comes out, the music comes out, and it sounds as professional as anything out there, which is part of my sort of, goal as well. There's one thing being do it yourself, but you don't want it to be cheesy. You don't want it to look like you did it.
Sure.
You want it to be just as viable as anything else out there. So that was a big part of it too.
One last question then, and I think I'm running out of time. So just quickly, you mentioned Eddie Van Halen earlier on.
Yeah.
How important or how impactful of a guitar player was he, not only to you, but in your opinion, to the kind of guitar world?
Well, it's interesting, like as far as his influence and his impact on the guitar world, it's so, you kind of can't comprehend how big it was, because when you think about all the guitar players that there are, electric guitar players, and you can only name like a couple. I mean, most people will probably point to two that were like game-changing, paradigm-shifting like moments. Hendrix and like Van Halen, and people can argue that there's other people. I get it, but like there'll never be somebody like that again. And so his influence globally on the guitar community is just it's unfathomable. Guitar was never the same. I mean, it saddens me to know that I'll never get to see him play again, that he died young, and we have his music to remember him by, but watching him play is really an incredible experience. For me as a guitar player, I'll never forget when I heard Eruption for the first time. And I wasn't experienced enough as a guitarist. I couldn't wrap my head around that being a guitar. It didn't sound like a guitar to me. I was like, how is anybody doing that? Like, it sounded like a keyboard or something, and there's no YouTube or, I was too young to like go to a concert. So I couldn't see what he was doing. And I'm just hearing all these notes flying by. And again, I didn't have the experience. So I didn't know there was a phaser on the sound and like a tape delay. And all I heard was this like, cascading flurry of notes. And it was just mind blowing. I never heard anything like that before. So to me, creatively and as a guitar player, it was just like, it sucked me in. I was like, how do you do that? How in the world is somebody doing that? And then you begin to explore. So he was a big influence on me for sure. But I've seen interviews with him, and you really can see what an innovative mind he had, and how the things that he came up with amplifiers and technique were all out of curiosity and like asking questions and like, hey, how come nobody ever did this before? Or I have this idea, I want to be able to do this. I wonder how you can do it. So he was like this, scientist, at the same time. And that's a really cool side to see. If you've ever seen interviews with him, it's really interesting to watch.
I'm going to look some up. And again, that's coming back to your approach then. It's the willingness to always continue learning and to explore. So absolutely.
And if Eddie imparted that on me a bit and everybody else, then that's a beautiful thing. So we'll miss him for sure.
All right, John, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I hope you have a great day. I wish you all the best of luck tomorrow with the release of the physical album.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a great day.
I appreciate it. Love the questions, and thanks for the interview.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.